News Talkers, Nationals leader David Littleproud and Independent MP Dai Le. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Ali. Good morning, David.
David, I'll start with you. It's such amazing pictures that we saw. It was a fitting send-off for the People's Pope.
Yeah, it was quite a poignant service to celebrate the life and the work of Pope Francis and all that he did, and the way that he started to modernise the Catholic Church, and I think he's done that in a measured and sensible way, and I think that it was appropriate that all the pageantry that would go with one of these funerals, despite him being a Jesuit priest, not wanting too much pomp and ceremony, I think they got the balance right in making sure that they respected his wishes and the life that he led in reflecting that ceremony through that, and I think the Catholic Church should be very proud of the way that they celebrated the life of the pontiff.
Yeah, it was simple but yet extraordinary at the same time. Dai, a really incredible moment also came before the service where we saw US President Donald Trump and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky sitting knee to knee in St. Peter's Basilica. It was a far cry from their fiery Oval Office showdown. Is it fitting that the Pope brought them together?
I think so. I mean, the Pope has always spoken out about wars. And I think we know him as somebody who talked about the wars, the impact of that on humanity overall. And I think he referred to the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine. And that at the end of the day, it's the civilians that are the victims. And I think, as somebody who survived the war in Vietnam, I definitely, really thank him and, the work that he has stood up around calling for peace and that people can resolve through peace, not through wars, not through, killings of innocent lives. And I think that message is very strong and clear to see the two of them sitting there. And I hope that those leaders and the leaders of the world think about that in terms of wars. He calls any wars as a destruction to humanity.
Yeah, and he wasn't afraid of being critical either of one of the most powerful men in the world.
Absolutely,
yeah, absolutely. Well, moving on, Labor is wasting no time in this final week of campaigning. This morning, pledging more than $200 million to give every Australian access to 24/7 health advice. Di, we are struggling to get doctors and nurses into existing hospitals and existing medical roles. Where do you think we're going to find the money to resource this?
Look, obviously we've seen that this money was not in the budget that the government announced, and we don't know where the government has found this money for. But any investment in health is very important. But the question is, why just prior to an election? And I know this urgent care clinic that they are rebadging, obviously, in many medical centres. But there are many issues around the urgent care clinics, and I think there's an urgent care clinic that we went to in our area. It's not open 24/7 as is proposed, 24/7. The other thing is that urgent care clinics, in these clinics that we've got, showed that there was advertising for the Labor Party. So I think that, and there's this scare campaign that's happening out there at the election at the moment, calling for the cut in Medicare when it's all BS, it's not true. And so they're just spending so much money and we just don't know where the money is coming from, and they seem to have no responsibility and accountability in announcing money that they're spending. So
just to clarify, you're saying that there are urgent care clinics in your electorate that say that they're open 24/7 but actually aren't?
That's right. They're open only till 10 o'clock. So that's another lie that I think that the government and the Labor Party needs to really correct, because it's, especially in a multicultural community, a lot of people don't understand and they just want access to hospitals.
Yeah, of course.
They should invest in hospitals, for instance. We need to invest in hospitals. And I have to say, I called the federal government last year to match the state government funding of our Fairfield Hospital, and they announced a couple of weeks ago $80 million, so thank you for that. But the community, our Fairfield community, called for, and they did a petition, and the state government invested $500 million in our hospital. But you can't leave it to the last minute before an election to invest.
Yeah, we've seen the Prime Minister travel around the country with his Medicare card. It's become his greatest accessory, I think, in this campaign. David, will the Coalition also back this policy, or have you guys got something else up your sleeve?
Yeah, well, you can't use that little green card unless you've got a credit card with you, which is what the Prime Minister fails to add to it. Look, telehealth's very important, particularly for us in regional, rural and remote Australia. In fact, the government took away our doctors through changes to the designated priority areas, which limited where foreign doctors could work. So obviously it'll be part of our costings, but they actually took resources away from telehealth. We were the ones that put it in place during COVID, put it as a permanent measure. And there is no Medicare campaign that has any credence by this Prime Minister. He has a real problem with the truth. We're not cutting anything out of Medicare. In fact, the only difference in health spending at this election is that Labor failing to match us on an extra $500 million on 20 supported Medicare health places in being able to see a psychologist, and they're not prepared to do that. We said that we'd do 20 Medicare-supported clinical sessions, and unfortunately this government won't match it. So unfortunately this has been a Medicare campaign rather than one that's predicated on fact, but we're going to show our costings and we'll be able to demonstrate that we're going to have a budget bottom line better than Labor.
Look, there's no question that health is one of the top issues coming into the election next week, but another big issue that we wanted to tackle just quickly: do onions belong on top or under the democracy sausage? I think this question is extraordinary. I can't believe anyone wants it under, but apparently 1 in 3 Aussies vote in favour of putting onions under the sausage. Di, cast your vote on this one. Where do onions belong?
My onions will be on top of the sausage.
What about you, David? Are you the 1 in 3 that likes it under?
No, I'm with Di. It's a garnish. Got to go on top, mixed with the tomato and barbecue sauce. It's beautiful that way.
Yum. I can't wait for some democracy sausage sizzles next week. Thanks, David, and I appreciate it. Over to you, Clint.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, team. Coming up.